Thank you, Jonathan, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the infrastructure access survey that we've conducted as part of these work streams. Firstly, a little bit about the survey itself, a little bit of analysis and data from the survey that we've received, and lastly, a few emerging early themes from the work. The aim of the survey was to pull together the experience of all the member companies who participate in these negotiations and get their experience of what it is that makes these negotiations difficult and indeed sometimes prevents their successful conclusion. The survey has covered access to host platforms and access to oil and gas pipelines. We asked the members about three areas: what we call the technical challenges, and these may be modifications to the host platforms, the processing of the fluids, and sometimes maybe conflicts with other production operations on the platform. The commercial challenges, such as tariff or cost share, and sometimes compensation for deferred production. And thirdly, about the negotiation process itself and the challenges that presents. For the technical and commercial challenges, we asked the companies to identify their impact on the negotiations. Were they what we have termed blockers, in other words, issues that stop the negotiations being concluded, or identified as major, minor problems? And I'll talk a bit more about how we categorize a major and minor problem later on. We had responses from 19 operators to the survey, representing their experience of over 80 access negotiations. As you can see, there's good coverage in all areas for host platforms and for the oil and gas pipelines. And I should emphasize that all this data has been provided in strict confidence to the work stream, and none of the data is accessible to identify the individual companies and pipelines and hosts concerned. The analysis has been conducted by Alison Booth of Oil and Gas UK, and I'd like to thank her for all her work on this in the preparation of the data. There are one or two gaps in the survey where we have a response from one party to a negotiation and not from the other side, and we are anxious to close those gaps. So if there are any companies who haven't responded to the survey yet, or maybe didn't put in a complete response, we'd still be very happy to receive that. Overall, the picture on negotiation is quite mixed. For host access, if you look at the data in the table, you'll see there are more negotiations that have been discontinued than have actually successfully concluded. For gas and oil pipelines, success rates are rather higher. But overall, an awful lot of data is described as work in progress, perhaps reflecting the timelines for these negotiations. If I turn now to a sample of our analysis, I'll talk about the technical challenges that we face. This table shows the technical challenges which most commonly prevent or cause major problems for access negotiations. And these examples are drawn from maybe 10 or 15 technical challenges that we offered in the survey. These are the ones that companies identified as causing the most problems. If we look first at the host platforms, you can see that in 16% of cases, one or more technical challenges has proved to be a blocker to the negotiation and has precluded agreement being reached. The most common in this area was space or load constraints on the host platform. In 66% of cases, there's been one or more major problems in the technical area, and this means that it requires a substantial intervention to overcome it and has a major impact on the economics of the deal. Again, space, load, riser constraints are identified as the main issues here. And in 88% of the deals, there was one or more minor problem identified. And the way we categorized this was it required a significant intervention, but it didn't have a material impact on the economics of the deal. In this area, contaminants, production chemistry were the more common themes. Similarly, we have the analysis for oil and gas pipelines. Here we can see it's much rarer for a technical challenge to be a blocker to the deal. only around 5% of cases. And this tends to be related to capacity, processing, or contaminants. The same themes occur with increasing frequency as major and minor challenges, but they appear less severe than for the host platforms. Just to illustrate this further, we can show how often and how severe the impact of individual technical challenges are. There were 12 categories of technical challenge, and I've just used as examples the 3 which caused the most severe problems. These were space, loading, and impact on operations. In each of these wheels, you can see the percentage of the negotiations that would block the deals. That's shown in the dark red quadrant, moving around to the lighter shades of major and minor problems, or indeed light shades where they didn't cause a problem at all. If I turn to the commercial side, we have a similar table which shows the most common challenges identified in the survey. Again, it appears that access to host platforms are the most challenging conversations. In 16%, there was one or more commercial blocker. In 51%, there were one or more major commercial challenges. And this means that one party considers the terms are substantially imbalanced and had a material impact on the economics. And again, a greater percentage of cases with minor challenges. For the hosts, capacity, the cost and timing of shutdown work, and priority for their fluids were considered the most important commercial challenges. For the pipelines, again, the challenges appear fewer and less severe than for hosts, but we see tariff and cost share emerging as important themes. Again, we can plot these 2 on the pie charts, and looking here at 3 of the important commercial priorities that occurred as challenges to negotiations: capacity, priorities, and the cost and timing of shutdown work for access to the hosts. And you can see again from the wheels how often they occurred to block or cause major problems for deals. The third element of our survey looked at the negotiation process itself. And I'm showing here just a brief summary of the information we gathered. As you can see, the majority of these deals are taking over a year to conclude, in some cases more than 2. Yet some deals, with best practice, can be concluded much more quickly, maybe 6 months or 6 months to a year. Where negotiations are very prolonged, resourcing and the low materiality of the host, of the opportunity to the host, were cited as the main reasons. As I said earlier, our work is not complete, but there are some themes emerging from the work we have so far, and this can inform the next stages of the work for all the work streams. We've looked at the challenges and some ideas here as to what may help. Many negotiations take too long. Perhaps greater transparency or standardization of contracts could help here. Infrastructure owners see little attraction in extending the life of their facilities to take third-party business. What could help? Perhaps a different business model for late-life infrastructure access, and perhaps some fiscal adjustments too. Thirdly, there's real competition for scarce platform resources as fields apply to tie back to late-life hosts. What could help? And we term this aggregation of demand. Simply the notion that rather than have 5 or 6 fields independently and separately tying back to a host over time, the fields could get together and create a single tie-back to a host platform and minimize interruption to its operations. It's also clear that for host platforms and for pipelines, we need a wider perspective than the relationship with a single field or prospect. We need to take a more holistic view of the opportunity. Again, this is something perhaps that DEC could help with through their stewardship reviews. These are early themes, and I'm sure more will emerge as we complete the analysis. I'm now going to pass over to Una to talk about identifying critical access, critical infrastructure.